Rod Serling criticized Jack Laird several times, the showrunner for Night Gallery, of using ghouls and goblins and different horror tropes for blackouts and stuff like that. But he couldn't really talk too much, and this is not a criticism of Rod Serling or Jack Laird. They were two very different writers and creators. But Deliveries in the Rear would be right up Jack Laird's alley because it includes everything from murder to grave robbing to ghouls to the exchange of human flesh for prestige and honor. Now, this is Season 2, Episode 19, which aired on February 9th, 1972. Now, David Jules' WordPress we're going to be talking about for most of the background, and also Scott Skelton's book on Night Gallery. They give it 3 to 3.5 stars. I think this is a 3-star show. Nothing against Jeff Corey's direction, but Cornell Wilde is a little bit over the top, and so is the supporting characters. Now, written by Rod Serling, with Cornell Wilde as Dr. John Fletcher, Rosemary Forsythe as Barbara Bennett, Walter Burke as Jameson, Peter Whitney as the first grave robber, Larry D. Mann as Detective Hannafy, a very good performance, Ken Smith as Mr. Bennett, Peter Bracco as Dr. Shockman, Ian Wolfe as Dillingham, the mortician, Marjorie Bennett as Mrs. Charlie Woods, John Madison as the second grave robber, and a very young Gerald McRaney as Tuttle. Now, in this one, a 19th century surgical instructor has a no questions asked policy regarding the source of his cadavers he demonstrates on in the class in a Night Gallery story, Deliveries in the Rear. Now, a lot of atmosphere to this. Our story begins on a chilly, foggy night as a horse-drawn cart pulls up to a back alley doorway. Two very, very shabby-looking men step up and knock at the door. When answered, they deliver their large, lumpy cargo inside, followed quickly by the man who greeted them, but not before he takes a quick, furtive look left and right to see if anyone has witnessed them. Now, this is a cadaver that the doctor is using to demonstrate the aspects of the human body, like human remains. Now, this is a cadaver that has been brought for Dr. John Fletcher, played by Wilde, mostly a Hollywood star, of the Macmillan School of Medicine, to use for demos to his class of medical students, of which Gerald McRaney plays one. At the lecture he's currently given, one student, McRaney, later Simon Simon Major Dad, in his first TV appearance, may have not had what it takes as he faints at the sight of the dead body. Now, after class is ended, Dr. Fletcher examines his newest delivery along with other that the men have brought. He takes a look at one body and dismisses it due to severe decomposition. This one has been dead at least 3 weeks and is no use to him, but the next one appears to be dead a mere 2 hours. An excellent subject. And he never really asked the two, grave robbers where it was coming from. Now, the two men who delivered the bodies negotiate a price of $50. I would suspect this is in pounds sterling, but, maybe it's a drop by the writer. Dr. Fletcher can't help but wonder whether or not these men killed the recently deceased. It seems to cause him some concern, but not undue concern. Now, at the home, his fiancée, Barbara Bennett, a very young, comely lass, played by Rosemary Forsythe. That evening, her father, Ken Smith, brings up the unpleasant subject with him that rumors have been going around as to the origin of the doctor's cadavers, saying that grave robbing, even murder, had been whispered about as the means. In an interesting soliloquy about the value of individual life, Fletcher agrees that it's possible some of his cadavers may have been recent murder victims, but he defends it because they are no doubt scum and now serve a higher purpose as they will help to teach men, as there were no women at this time in medical school, it would seem, to save the lives of others. Now, when Mr. Bennett basically bawls out Dr. Fletcher for what he views as a completely callous attitude toward the murder victims that he's too willing to accept as lab aids, then later privately his daughter muses, how can a man so dedicated to saving lives be so ignorant of the sanctity of life itself? Now, eventually, as he climbs the steps to his home, an old woman accosts Dr. Fletcher, saying he has her late husband and calls him a ghoul. Again, we see a pang of conscience, but no more from Fletcher. Now, like Mr. Bennett, Dr. Fletcher supervises the school. Dr. Shockman and Peter Bracco has heard the same rumors of unsavory sources for the cadavers, and he confronts Fletcher one day before class. He has heard from the old woman complaining that her husband has ended up on a lecture hall slab. He suggested that Fletcher use animals rather than humans as his dissection subjects, but Fletcher rejects this as being a poor teaching substitute. Now, Shockman eventually informs Fletcher that the police will be coming soon, looking for the woman's husband. Fletcher insists there will be no problem as all of his current cadavers are female, which of course is not true. Now, to come up with a female cadaver, Fletcher has again enlists the aid of the two unsavory grave robbing, perhaps murdering men. The men find a woman walking alone that night and do their thing, delivering the body that morning before Fletcher's next demo. Now, shortly after, a police officer arrives to question Fletcher, convinced he will soon catch him with a hot cadaver. Looking for the missing man who was reported, he looks under the sheet of the cadaver that Fletcher is about to demonstrate on, and seeing it's a woman, is disappointed but vows to eventually catch Fletcher. The men demand $100 from the doctor for this corpse, and considering he needs a female, he pays. Now, Fletcher then begins his lecture, and it begins with one similar to what he said to Mr. Bennett, that no individual life is of consequence if it means the saving of many lives. As he prepares to begin his demo, he pulls back the sheet from the body and screams in horror, as we then see the face of his cadaver, Fletcher's fiancée, Barbara. Now, the atmosphere of this is quite good, and I think it has to do with Jeff Corey being a longtime actor, and he just is coming off True Grit and other key roles. And Jeff Corey was an actor in the big season one, not say pilot episode, but one of the season one's key episodes. He puts it all together. Now, the idea, you have to make it enough atmospheric that it seems American but doesn't seem British. I would think this is probably like a big city of some sort, Chicago, New York. Some people believe this was a Canadian matter because of some of the accents of the Brits. But and I'm not a big fan of Cornel Wilde, although he's what you call a B plus actor in Hollywood for a lot of years. But the whole concept of the grave robbers, because it comes across like a DC Comics kind of, denouement at the end. You know where this is going to be going, but like I said, the doctor is nonplussed. It's almost like there's an egotism. Only he can determine, what deserves to be dead and what deserves to be living. Now, obsessive compulsive, or what do you want to call it? But the idea, ladies and gentlemen, if you watch the show Murdoch Mysteries in Canada and some of the British interpretations, American interpretations of Britain at the time, there's a lot of rip-off of this. Jeff Corey, again, a very underrated director, and the intelligence he shows in every scene. And the idea is, ladies and gentlemen, he uses half close-ups in a lot of the major scenes, which I think is very effective because when you see the denouement of the fiancé laid out in a slab, cold as ice, like I said, the denouement is there. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would give this, again, 3 to 3.5 stars out of 4. Some of the acting is very stilted, like the Grave Robbers, if you would have brought in a Henry Silva, or somebody as a leader of the Grave Robbers, or one of the, maybe like John Carradine, who ended up in Night Gallery, big surprise later on. I would like to see John Carradine be the main grave robber. It'd be tremendous. Or maybe a good character actor like Barry Morse or something. Be pretty good. Or James Best. I'm kind of surprised that James Best and Barry Morse never ended up in a Night Gallery. It would have been tremendous. We know Leslie Nielsen appeared, but, it is what it is. So, again, this is a very interesting Night Gallery episode. Don't watch it with the lights off. Watch it with the lights on, and just remember, this is what medicine was like back in the day. It was all experimental. And in this case, it was just a crossover, late 18th century meets 19th century meets 20th century, and there was grave robbers back then. Where did the cadavers come from, ladies and gentlemen? Debt wasn't cheap back then. If you wanted a cadaver, let's say, you had to pay for it, especially a human one, because, some colleges, there was rumor that this was done in some of the major colleges back today where graves were being pilfered. Anyway, I'd like to know where Rod Serling came up with this. If anybody knows, let me know. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what we're doing with our second look at the Night Gallery podcast I've done previously, let us know with a like, comment, subscribe, or share.